Hello, and welcome to the Washington Courts Report, the official podcast of the Administrative Office of the Courts, where I cover some of the most exciting news and programs from the AOC and around the Washington court system as a whole. I'm your host, Patric Haerle, and today we're going to be taking a closer look at the Washington Courthouse Facilitator program. For those who don't know, a courthouse facilitator is an individual who assists self-represented parties without an attorney or pro se litigants with their family law or guardianship cases in superior court. While courthouse facilitators are not replacements for lawyers, as they cannot give legal advice or represent someone in court, they can help self-represented parties with their family law cases under Title 26 RCW, such as divorces, child support, paternity, and the modification or maintenance of parenting plans, among other things. While exact services may vary from county to county, GR 27 is the court rule that defines the basic services facilitators may provide to self-represented parties. Some of these include explaining and providing guidance for filling out forms, reviewing completed forms, explaining legal terms and court procedures, calculating child support, and providing a referral to alternate legal and social service resources. To review GR 27, you can visit the Washington Courts website, where it will be linked below this episode on the Washington Courts Report page, which you can find below the Features section of the main site. Now, to gain some insight into the Courthouse Facilitator program, I'm excited to have Becky Turbyfill and Kayley Carrillo with us today. Becky is a courthouse facilitator with Kitsap County, and Kayley is a court program analyst with the AOC, who coordinates the statewide facilitator program and has previous experience as a facilitator with Pierce County. It's sure to be a great conversation, so let's dive right in. Well, Becky, Kayley, welcome to the show and thank you for coming on.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And just diving right in, so courthouse facilitators, they assist self-represented parties or pro se litigants, those who don't have an attorney representing them. You assist them with court procedures, but could you expand a little bit on what this form of instruction takes? And we'll start with Becky.
Okay, well, the courthouse facilitator is governed by GR 27. There were specific laws written for our program. Currently, I don't believe anyone is a licensed attorney in the state of Washington that's acting as a facilitator, but Kayley can probably address that kind of stuff more than I can. I am equivalent to a paralegal or a legal assistant. I have about 25 years of experience in family law. Not all facilitator programs are the same. Every county can set their own policies. For instance, I work for the Kitsap County Clerk's Office, but some of the programs are maintained by Superior Court Administration. And so we don't always have the same boss. And we don't always have the same rules. What I do is family law and guardianship, both minor and adult. We have two facilitators in Kitsap County, and we kind of divvy up the work by category. Our other facilitator took guardianship as her expertise, and I take family law as my expertise, but we are cross-trained. Our job is to teach people how to go to court on their own. We do not give legal advice. We do not help them plan a legal strategy. We help them with knowing what forms they need, going over the forms with the client to make sure that they have answered correctly and completely. Most of the time, the people don't understand the forms and they're not understanding the questions. And they'll tend to skip things they don't understand. So then we have an incomplete form.
Okay, that definitely makes sense. You need to fill that specific role. Kayley, did you have anything to add?
So as Becky outlined, it's different county by county. The facilitator programs are staffed at the county level. But generally speaking, the assistance that they provide looks like assistance with understanding the forms, checking them for completion, as Becky already indicated, explaining local processes and procedures, and helping the self-represented person understand that they are representing themselves in court without the legal advice aspect.
Okay, and you both emphasize that not legal advice aspect is important. Could you both, starting with Kayley, kind of go into a little bit, where do you draw the line between legal advice and procedural guidance?
Sure. So, explaining what the law means would be considered procedure and process. But if you are guiding someone on how to interpret what that means or how to apply it into a decision that the individual is making, that is where that line gets crossed. So, for example, if someone is coming in and they need to file for divorce, we'll just keep it really simple, for example. A facilitator could say, here's the paperwork that you need. Here is how you file it within our county. Here's the cost. You need to make X number of copies, etc. That is legal information. The legal advice part would be getting into the details of the paperwork of how to divide property. Again, for example, how to divide debts, what the kids' schedule, if there's children involved, should look like. Instead, for the facilitator, it needs to come from the self-represented person saying, here's how I want it done. And the facilitator could show them, here is the section in the paperwork where you would write that out.
Absolutely. That's an important distinction. Becky, do you have anything to add to that?
One of the things, a little bit, now my example is going to be child support because it's actually one of the most complicated and confusing aspects. The Division of Child Support in Washington State has very specific laws over how to calculate child support. Some of us have a software subscription-based program that will calculate it for them. The example I'm going to give you is I don't determine what the data is. I'm not going to say what someone's income is. They're going to give me a copy of their pay stub, and I can use that to calculate child support with. I will not determine, and while it looks like we come out with the amount that's owed, we're using Washington state laws, algebra and calculus to come up with that based upon the information the client gave us. We don't control the data. All we do is input it with what they're telling us. And that's an example of legal procedure versus legal advice. I'm not controlling what the client wants.
Absolutely. Sort of letting them find their own path while you're helping them along the way. So one thing want to hear from both of you on this is, why is it so important to have these neutral third parties helping with this procedural guidance? Because they do have the forms available to them, but as you said earlier, it can be really complicated.
The courthouse and Superior Court, any court, only has services in certain areas. Criminal has a little bit, they have probation officers, etc. Dependency court has services, drug courts, treatment courts. Family law has zero. And so the forms are confusing. They're written and by attorneys in attorney language. While they're multiple choice, and while the forms have come a long way, most people get overwhelmed by the amount of paperwork that even in an agreed case, and they stop reading because it's overwhelming and there's terms in there they can't figure out what they're talking about. So what we found is people that use our program have a better understanding of what they're signing than the people that don't use the program. There's also things Most of the forms are multiple choice. But if you don't understand what your choices are, they get stuck in trying to choose one of those things when what they want is different. So the people that are doing it by agreement come in and tell me what their agreement is. And as Kayley said, I show them where in the paperwork to do that. And if our program didn't exist, they would be filling out paperwork and going to judges that's incomplete. And they don't understand. And if it's contested, they don't understand things like serving the other party and how that's going to happen. Most contested cases, I'd say 80% of them think the court's going to serve. That's a total misconception by pro se litigants. They think the court makes arrangements for service. I'm the one that gets to tell them they have to make their own arrangements. That's an example of misunderstanding the system.
Okay, and it's great that, facilitators like you are there to help them. I think we've all gone through the experience, whether in the legal system or not, of being handed a stack of papers that don't really make a whole lot of sense. So having someone to guide you through would be really helpful in all aspects of life. Kaylee, do you have anything to add on to that?
Yeah. Again, Becky did a great job explaining. I'll just add as well that the facilitator program is there to benefit those that do not have attorneys with their superior court, family law, or guardianship cases. But it also, in turn, ends up helping the court system a bit, which, again, in turn, then helps the public. But basically, it's helping to basically make cases shorter because courts are not having to continue court dates to allow people for mistakes, misunderstandings, etc., to allow more time for that. So the court cases are getting shorter, which then helps to not bog down the court system. So then again, the public or the self-represented parties and the ones with attorneys still are then able to get court dates sooner again. So it's kind of that circle of life, you could say, where the facilitator program really is ultimately there to help the self-represented parties, but in turn, it's also affecting the courts in a positive way.
And just to piggyback onto that, the clerk's office also, which takes the majority of the phone calls and the people at the counter, they have someone to refer them to. And so the whole legal system, clerk's office, superior court, at least they have the ability to take that person that might need more help and send them to our program.
Yeah, it really has that trickle down or trickle up effect, if you will, of helping that entire legal system. So one thing you guys touched on is there are differences between all the courthouse facilitator programs. You can't lump them all into one group. So there are 50 facilitators around the state in 32 of Washington's 39 counties. And as far as I know, they all serve the same basic function of serving self-represented persons, pro se litigants. But could either of you expand a little bit on what are some of the differences between courthouse facilitator programs around the state?
As I mentioned before, whoever is administrating the program can set their policies. So as I work for the Kitsap County Clerk's Office, and that's who sets the policies for my program. What we do here in Kitsap is we take people in family law or minor guardianship from the filing stages, maybe even pre-filing, and we will do settlement conference prep and trial prep, teaching them what's the difference between a motion hearing and a trial. I do not help plan what they're going to argue, but in other counties, they do things like they only review final documents by pro se litigants before it goes to the judge. They don't touch trials, they don't touch settlement conferences, and some of them don't touch contested cases. That's an example of whoever the boss is, whoever the program administrator gets to set what the rules are for their facilitator.
Kaylee, For you're for the AOC, you help coordinate the Courthouse Facilitator program throughout the state and serve as a point of contact for all Courthouse Facilitators. So I'd really be interested to hear your perspective from a statewide view. What are some of the differences between programs?
So some of the differences that I've seen, some of it does go back to what Becky's explained with where the staffing falls. So from like the administrative logistical side of it, depending on who the facilitator is staffed by, could determine their qualifications for the position. So what I mean is some facilitators are required to have their degree, their college degree. Some facilitators are not required. Some receive benefits for their position as far as like pay goes. They also get higher pay. Other facilitators don't get benefits. They don't make as much. Some facilitators are part-time, and they might be part-time another position within their court. A lot of, I would say, the basis for those that might be a part-time position is based on the community needs as well. So for example, if it's a smaller county, then maybe they only have the capacity or the need for a part-time facilitator versus the larger counties that have a need for 3 to 8 facilitators at any time. So it just, there's just a difference there based on the community needs. And then as far as like the public facing side or what those that use the services would see there, that difference is, and as Becky touched on, it's a variety of what the assistance is that they can provide. And that is still set by their bosses, basically. So who they're staffed by. So that can range from anything from simply just reviewing completed forms and telling them here's spots you need to still finish or make corrections to, all the way up to helping them with completing the paperwork. So they tell you here's what we want, and then the facilitator would explain here's the section where that goes, here's other sections that we need to go over because this is how you answered, so this is what this means. Can you confirm, is that what you were trying to say or not? Okay, then we maybe need to review that. I'm tempted to call it like hand holding a little bit more versus hands off. So that variety is completely different. Becky mentioned that she doesn't think we have any attorneys who are facilitators. That is correct to a certain point. Grays Harbor has a self-help center, and their staff are composed of one courthouse facilitator, and then they do also have an office attorney. She's not considered a facilitator, but she works alongside the facilitator and has some different rules that apply to her as far as what assistance she can provide. Another example is out in Stevens County. Their 3 courthouse facilitators are actually triple LTs. I'm trying to remember what that stands for.
Limited legal license
technicians. There we go. That is a separate program from the facilitator program that was created around family law as well. They are no longer running that program, but the existing triple LTs are still practicing. And this particular group of women who work out of Stevens County, when they are at the courthouse, which is only once a week, when they are working in their facilitator capacity, they are following the facilitator rule, not their triple LT rule. So the other 4 days a week that they work, they're on their own personal schedules of following their triple LT rules. So it's a little bit, again, it's completely unique to that county because that's just what they had to do to be able to get facilitators, was hire triple LTs 1 day a week to help with the paperwork for their county. And then otherwise, they basically work part-time as a facilitator, part-time as a triple LT. So it's just very unique. And then other part-time positions that I've heard of are other counties where that individual maybe works part-time as a facilitator, part-time as a deputy clerk, for example. So they might be helping out at the front counter, answering questions that way, processing paperwork, but not in the facilitator capacity.
Okay, and there is quite a bit of variety. It seems like a lot of it happens around the facilitator programs in addition to within them. Something I'm really interested to hear from both of you. Becky, starting with you, what have you found throughout how long you've been a facilitator to be the most rewarding part about the work?
I'm a people person, so I believe that if you don't enjoy customer service, you're going to burn out very quickly. And there's a lot of what I think I was really surprised over when I took this position is how many agreed cases I really have. I would say 50% are agreed and 50% are contested. People don't understand the paperwork, and it's so overwhelming they don't want to do it. And so just the thank yous that come from my clients and watching someone succeed with something that's very difficult is probably the most rewarding part of it. Kayley, what did you get out of it?
Yeah, that's great. And Kayley, either speaking from your experience as a facilitator or your more recent experience as someone who coordinates and works with facilitators, what do you find to be the most rewarding part?
Yeah, I would say the overall arc that I've heard from most facilitators, I'll start there, is bridging that access to justice for people that either can't afford an attorney or are not able to go that route for whatever reason. There are other reasons than just financial, but being able to help with that, kind of provides that like self-fulfillment in a way, but also just, giving back to the community as a whole. That seems to be kind of, like I said, like the overall arc that I've heard from most people. For me personally, with my experience, the piece that I always appreciated was being able to take something that is so complicated and complex, but being able to break it down to where the person that's sitting across from me understands it. And not just having them say, yes, 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 I understand, but actually watching them kind of have that aha moment of, really? The word jurisdiction is just asking about where I live, for example. Like, why does it have to be so complicated? Like, okay, well, most people understand, living or have lived for a certain time period. But then you say jurisdiction and they kind of just look at you like you have, like, I don't have a disease. So it just kind of, like I said, breaking down the complexity of terminology and process. And then I'm a very type A personality as well. So I was all about sticky notes when I would help people, and I would clip and sticky note and put notes on everything. So that way, when somebody walked away, even if they didn't remember what I said, they could refer back to their different stacks of papers with the notes. And that helped a lot too.
All right, and I really like hearing, the different perspectives. So everyone does it for different reasons, but it is that, ability to interact with people and help them and break down some complex topics that really make Courthouse facilitators so vital. And sort of wrapping up here as our last question for both of you, we can start with Becky. Is there any last thing you want people to remember about Courthouse facilitators or message you'd like to leave off on?
We don't have exact data for how many pro se litigants really come before the bench. We have an estimate that we gathered on our own by asking other facilitators. How many clients do each county? Nobody tracks how many are pro se. So what we came up with was probably about somewhere between 70 and 80% of cases are pro se. And the data skewed because sometimes there's an attorney with one party and the other party is pro se. Sometimes they're both pro se. So you're never going to get exact data. 100% of my caseload is pro se. The bench only sees about 80%. And so if we can be the voice for the unrepresented litigant over what the adversity they go through trying to get a case before the court in the proper format, that's what our job is.
Absolutely, giving a voice to the voiceless, such an important part of the justice system. And Kayley, did you have anything to add?
Nope. Prince Staple, do it. That's it. End on Becky. That was a great note.
Okay, fantastic. That sounds great. Thank you
What I
both.
love about my right hand there, Kayley has been, we didn't have anyone in her position for over 10 years running this program through AOC. And having not only someone helping us, but having Kayley has been such a difference. So thank you, AOC, for giving us someone to help us, guide us in remembering we exist.
Aw, shucks, Becky. Thank you.
Yep, we all appreciate what Kayley does. She does absolutely amazing work. Well, thank you so much, Becky and Kayley, for coming on the show and teaching us more about Courthouse Facilitators. I think it's a really interesting program around Washington State that a lot of people maybe don't know enough about. So, again, thank you both, and have a great rest of your day. And that's all for today's episode. For more information on the Courthouse Facilitator program, visit www.courts.wa.gov and find our podcast under the featured section of the homepage. Once again, a big thanks to Kayley and Becky for coming on the show. And on behalf of Washington's Administrative Office of the Courts, thank you for listening to this episode of the Washington Courts Report podcast. If you're interested in hearing more, you can subscribe to Washington Courts on YouTube or Washington Courts Report on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, where new episodes will be releasing monthly. New episodes will also be posted on the Washington Courts Facebook and LinkedIn pages upon release. Once again, thanks for listening and have a great day.